Peggy the poet writes, having to stay home, something I have never done. How long can I last? Getting projects done, doll clothes made and pictures hung. Quarantine bonus. From Sarah Laird, at home we have visitors, deer, critters, birds, butterflies. Few human pals, though. And Judith Ferrari writes, boundaries enclose. What is safety really? Mist obscures the dawn. And finally, from Bruce Carpenter, time seems to stand still. Good friends seem farther away, but love connects us. There ends the readings. Our message today, resilience, wisdom from the past. Everywhere we look, we see evidence of the cycle of new beginnings. The earth thaws and becomes soft again, giving way to the emergence of new growth. Spring is a hopeful season. It brings transformation and change from darkness to light, from cold to warmth, from gray to bursts of color. It's a time for cleaning house, new growth in gardens, and baby animals. In pre-industrial communities, spring equated to a new lease on life. Just consider the flow of healing rains, the sun returns to the earth, animals begin to multiply, and crops are prepared. All of this points to life returning to earth and recharging the humans who inhabit it. In ancient times, when the chances for survival were far slimmer than today, if people survived to see spring, it meant a fair shot at enjoying another chapter of life. The bright, colorful, fresh looks that come with spring are hopeful signs that life on this earth renews again and again. But just as seasons change, we don't remain in any one season or cycle of life indefinitely, because we too have cycles and rhythms to our lives and to our growth process. Often when we think we are at the end of something, we are at the beginning of something else. After the dormancy of the past 2 years, we are ready to move into a cycle of spring freshness. UUNB member Carolyn Carr reminds us that first we were afraid. Vaccines calmed us down, but still we wore masks. The church closed its doors. Cameras appeared on site. Zoom hosts soon followed. Masks are coming off. The community is safe. Now coffee comes back. Coffee. Now for Unitarian Universalists, that's particularly important. For some people, coffee hour is at the top of the list for showing up on Sunday. During our 2 years of social distancing, most of us have been very impatient, for good reason. But most of all, we have been resilient. Resilience may be a personality trait, but it can also be built up intentionally. It doesn't mean that people don't experience stress, emotional upheaval, and suffering, or that we are particularly mentally tough. But resilience means being able to work through emotional pain and suffering, which is what we have all done to some degree. UUNB member Kelly Schaefer reflects, since 2020, an all-out fight to survive. Now we turn the tide. Yes, turning the tide. But what exactly does that entail? Turning the tide, entering into what some describe as a new normal. Do we try to forget about everything that happened in the last 24 months? Or do we bring fragments of experiences from the past to create something fresh? After all, everything in nature that is colorful and new this time of year comes from seeds that lay dormant in the dark earth through the cold winter. The Akan people of West Africa and Ghana believe that the experiences of the past serve as a guide for planning the future. The word for that is Sankofa. The literal translation of the word is, and I quote, "It is not taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind." Now, to the Akan, it is the wisdom in learning from the past which ensures a strong future. Writer, philosopher George Santayana said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." The questions on my mind are the same ones that many of you are pondering. How will this pandemic change the way we live? And what does the future hold? There's no way to escape the change in perspective that it will bring. But like the Akan, we will hopefully look back on this time and feel that we have learned some things that will benefit us in the future. While the pandemic was a very confusing and challenging time for many people, it undoubtedly gave humanity an incredibly rare opportunity to learn some challenging lessons. For so long, it feels as if we had been living in a way that went against everything that's natural and sacred. We lived in a way that neither served humans nor the natural world. And yet, we continued on this path, powerless to stop what we were doing. It's as if we were all part of a machine that kept chugging along, but no one could find the right button to stop. Well, that stop button arrived, and it wasn't like anything we could have ever imagined. Theologian Frederick Beckner reminds us that you can survive on your own, you can grow strong on your own, you can prevail on your own, but you cannot become human on your own. This pandemic equalized and showed us the weight of our humanity. The virus was indiscriminate in its reminder to us that despite our religion, culture, customs, poor or rich, the common denominator was the human body that we inhabit, no matter which part of the globe that you lived on. The reminder of being human and unable to be in control of everything all the time is one of those lessons to retrieve from the past as a reminder of fragility that can infuse us with compassion for one another if we allow it. The lessons learned will trigger a much-needed change of perspective for the way we do things on the planet that will enable us to reform. Perhaps we can see the value in living a quieter, more peaceful life. Because when our lives were put on pause by the pandemic, many were forced to work from home, and we could no longer travel unless out of complete necessity. With this, we were given the power of stillness and the opportunity to unapologetically slow down. There was no other situation other than an outbreak of a virus where our world would come to such a standstill. However, we are now all praying and hoping we will never find ourselves facing such devastation again. But this was a time to go within and be still with ourselves, a time to heal and remove emotional blockages and meditate. This was an opportunity to do the inner work that we previously said we had no time for. That is worth going back to fetch and bring forward for personal transformation in the freshness of spring. Connection with each other is something that is so critical for our emotional and mental well-being, yet is something that we often take for granted. UUNB member Irene Keller reminds us, fear breeds loneliness. Shadows cover the landscape. The inability to interact with family and friends was one of the most difficult parts of living through the pandemic. So I think that it's important for us all to remember how overjoyed we were to see and hug a loved one or hold a healthy grandchild after waiting months from the time of their birth to see them. I hope we all remember that friends and family are everything, and we all need to reach out to each other like never before and bask in the joy of connection. Just maybe we might be a little bolder in the future and share our smiles and greetings freely with those we don't even know. While the world stopped and we were confined to our homes, nature never stopped. But the sad truth is that less human activity meant that nature was able to thrive in a way that most of us haven't seen in our lifetime. Incredible stories emerged about wild animals taking over quiet city centers and dolphins returning to waters that they hadn't been spotted in for hundreds of years. UUNB member Joy Roman recalls a single moment. Nature was as it should be, a beautiful sight. This ought to be the big wake-up call we need to lessen our carbon footprint. Maybe by seeing nature in full force with all its beauty will prompt us to create new systems where humans and nature can thrive, leading to big environmental changes. Good health is something we so easily take for granted until it's at risk. This pandemic forced us to completely rearrange our priorities because the possibility of our health taking a downturn made many of us pay more attention to our nutritional intake and cleanliness. Some of us began taking preventive health measures and steps to boost our immune systems. Our good health is gold. Moreover, having a working body with no serious physical ailments is reason enough to be grateful. Let's remember that if your health, safety, and access to food are jeopardized, material things are worthless. It doesn't mean never buying beautiful clothes or shoes again. It just helps to put into perspective exactly where our priorities lay. Every relevant story needs a hero. And in the story of the COVID-19 pandemic, the heroes are the people who kept everything going while risking their health and safety every day to do it. Healthcare workers, delivery drivers, public transportation drivers, and those who work in the supermarkets and food distribution. In the past, so many of these professions were deemed as jobs that require little skill and didn't deserve much pay. However, as a result of the pandemic, many changes have been made to raise hourly wages because we would be in a real crisis without these people. So what will come as a result of this crisis? Our chosen faith, Unitarian Universalism, is filled with individuals who strive to be the best version of themselves while working to make the world a better place. And as individuals, we can make our own choices. And it's our individual choice that will make all the difference. Will we change our ways? Or will we go back to the way we were in our unhealthy normality? Individual change and transformation will always triumph. Or will we learn from this situation and make a Sankofa return to retrieve all that we have learned and do what we can to preserve nature and bring more stillness into our lives? Most importantly, never take people or our health and safety for granted again. From my heart to yours, may it be so.